Evelyn, turn that down, please. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Matters of Faith, the radio show. Matters of Faith is a show designed to bring issues of interest to you, the listening and viewing audience, that will put a biblical perspective on everyday issues. I am your host, the Reverend Dr. J. Lauren Russell, and it is my job to engage you in stimulating dialogue that's inspiring, encouraging, and motivating, dialogue and conversations that will help you build your determination, your commitment, and your character, conversations that will help you keep the faith. Everyone born of God overcomes the world. This is the victory that has overcome the world, even our faith. 1 John chapter 5, verse 4. And now, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, without further ado, it is time for Matters of Faith, the radio show. Good evening. It's Monday, November 4th. It's 8 o'clock, and it's time for Matters of Faith, the radio show. I am your host and executive producer, Reverend Dr. J. Lauren Russell. And tonight we're talking about the article and the topic, Living in the Overflow. Living in the Overflow. And my very special guest tonight, return guest from last week, Reverend Dr. S. Wayne Stokeling. Oh, you don't want to miss this. Telephone, tell a friend. We're on YouTube, the Matters of Faith, the radio show YouTube channel. We're on Matters of Faith, the Facebook group, and J. Lauren Russell's Facebook group. Make sure you telephone. Make sure you tell a friend that we're on again. Matters of Faith, the radio show. Living in the Overflow. With yours truly, Reverend Dr. J. Lauren Russell and Reverend Dr. S. Wayne Stokeling. Please don't forget our sponsors and advertisers, the JLR Company and J. Lauren Russell Consulting, LLC, for all of your church financial consulting needs. You need a church loan. You need your trustees to be trained. You need biblical economic training. You need personal loan reduction strategies, property development, property maintenance. Remember, it's not about the castle. It's about the kingdom. Reach out to us. Email us at jlaurenr@jlr.llc. That's JLORENR@jlr.llc. Or simply give us a telephone call at 718-328-8096. That's 718-328-8096. Matters of Faith, the book. You can use our Cash App to obtain it. Just $ Matters of Faith. The book is $24.15. That includes shipping and handling. You can send your check or money order to the JLR Company, Post Office Box 301, New York, New York 10035. That's Post Office Box 301, New York, New York 10035. You can also get it as an ebook by going to www.smashwords.com/books/view/993177. That's www.smashwords.com/books/view/993177. Check out the Eat Okra app for all black-owned restaurants all over the nation. That's right, Eat Okra. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share our Matters of Faith YouTube channel. That's the Matters of Faith, the radio show YouTube channel. And last but not least, get your subscription to Better Mag magazine today. A 2-year subscription is only $27.50, and you can get that by going to www.abettermag.com. That's www.abettermag.com. And now the article, Living in the Overflow. I've sent that link out to many of you. You got it directly. If you did not receive it, that article can be found in my social media links, J. Lauren Russell, Matters of Faith, Facebook group, and Facebook pages. You can also find it on X, formerly known as Twitter. It can also be found in the Yonkers Insider online newspaper. www.yonkersinsider.blogspot.com. It is also found in Better Mag magazine, www.abettermag.com. That's www.abettermag.com. The column can also be found in Pamela's Big Heart newsletter, Living in the Overflow. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verses 11 through 18, New King James Version. Beware that you do not forget the Lord your God by not keeping his commandments, his judgments, and his statutes, which I command you today, lest, when you have eaten and are full, and have built beautiful houses and dwell in them, and when your herds and your flocks multiply, and your silver and your gold are multiplied, and all that you have is multiplied, when your heart is lifted up, and you forget the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage, who led you through that great and terrible wilderness, in which were fiery serpents and scorpions, and thirsty land, where there was no water, who brought water for you out of the flinty rock, who fed you in the wilderness with manna, which your fathers did not know, that he might humble you, and that he might test you, to do you good in the end. Then you say in your heart, my power and the might of my hand have gained me this wealth. And you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he swore to your fathers, as it is this day. Living in the Overflow. What are your earliest memories? Do you remember the first time you walked, or the first words you spoke? What about the time you learned to tie your own shoes? Very few, if anyone, can remember any of those instances, but we can remember our parents telling us not to touch the fire, or we will get burned. Well, to be honest, we probably don't remember that either, but we do know that we learned that lesson. We make it a point not to touch hot surfaces. Many of the things we learned in our early life, whether we remember them or not, were taught to us to prepare us for future blessings. Moses is instructing the children of Israel, challenging them to remember what they had been taught about God's commandments, judgments, and his statutes. The blessings prepared for them in the promised land were pledged to their ancestors and are not that different from the blessings planned for the followers of Christ today. We are challenged to remember the lessons we were taught in the same way as the Israelites. The promise then and the promise now is an abundance of everything. Beautiful houses that we will occupy. Herds and flocks of animals will be multiplied, and silver and gold will be increased exponentially. Sometimes we fool ourselves into thinking, just like the Israelites, that it is our power and the might of our hand that have gained us this wealth. The land the children of Israel were about to inherit and the wealth they were about to acquire was not because of something they deserved nor earned. Remembering past experiences helps to prevent the tendency to forget who made all blessings possible. For the children of Israel, there was the likelihood of getting puffed up with pride, forgetting who brought them out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage, who led them through that great and terrible wilderness, in which were fiery serpents and scorpions and thirsty land, where there was no water, who brought water for them out of the flinty rock, who fed them in the wilderness with manna, which their fathers did not know. The same tendencies are with believers today. Like the Israelites, we have been brought over and through some tough times, times that are a part of a test that prepares us for the good God will do for us in the end. They were about to experience a blessing from the Lord God, who gives them power to get wealth. They needed to know that they were living in the overflow of God's grace that resulted from his covenant, which he swore to their fathers, that he may establish his covenant, which he swore to their fathers, as it is this day. The easy to read Bible translate that same verse as he is doing today. Doing today is remembering the overflowing blessings after coming out of the wilderness experience. Doing today is remembering the carryover of blessings they received from the promises made to their ancestors. Doing today is the overflow of blessings for today's believers to do you good in the end. just as the Lord promised. Be blessed. And now, my question: in what ways can we demonstrate that we are living in the overflow of blessings promised to our ancestors? Let me ask that question again. In what ways can we demonstrate that we are living in the overflow of blessings promised to our ancestors? Matters of Faith family, it gives me a great deal of pleasure and an honor to introduce my very special guest this evening. Born in Perry, Georgia, the Reverend S. Wayne Stokeling was called to preach at the age of 7. He served the Lord at Greater Union Baptist Church, where he was youth minister and soon became a guiding force at area revivals for youth and adults alike. Pastor of St. John Baptist Church in Brooklyn, New York, now Journey Church of Brooklyn, since 1986, Reverend Stokeling is the moderator of the New York Missionary Baptist Association, an outstanding community activist. He led his congregation in the development of Project Return, a narcotics and alcohol abuse program, a men's fellowship, which seeks to address the needs of the family, New York's first Speaking of Women's Health, a National Women's Health Conference, and programs for AIDS counseling, after school and SAT tutoring, GED classes, and a variety of other self-help and educational projects. A long-term children's advocate, Pastor Stokeling organized a mentoring program, Mind Your Mentoring, which has taken young black urban professionals into New York public schools since 1993. In addition, he and his neighborhood prayer watch spearheads Someone is Praying for Me, monthly services to strengthen youth through prayer. He also sponsored the construction of a 178-unit apartment complex next to his church. Prior to being called to St. John, Reverend Stokeling served as pastor of Friendship Baptist Church in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and Friendship Baptist Church in Henderson, Georgia. Now serving steadfastly as one of Brooklyn's senior pastors, he is the first vice moderator of the New York Missionary Baptist Association, a member of the Progressive Baptist State Convention. He has served as a lecturer on church history for his group as well as for the Empire State Baptist Convention, and served on the Board of Trustees of the National Baptist Convention. Dr. Stokeling has preached and lectured around the world, including France, England, Trinidad, and parts of Africa. He frequently speaks at conventions, conferences, commencements, and classrooms, including Weill Cornell Medical School, Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons, and Princeton Theological Seminary. An academician, as well as a theologian, Reverend Stokeling received a bachelor's degree in business administration from Mercer University in Macon, Georgia, a master's degree in management and finance from Georgia State, and an MBA from New York University. He completed leadership programs at Harvard University and Princeton University's theological seminaries. He also has attended the seminary of the East New York Chandler School of Theology of Emory University and Atlanta, the London School of Economics, and the Theological Seminary at Vanderbilt University. Reverend Stokeling has received numerous awards and honors, including honorary doctorate degrees from Luther Rice Seminary in Jacksonville, Florida, Fitzgerald Theological Seminary in Fitzgerald, Georgia, and the Macon School of Theology. So, Matters of Faith family, you understand why I'm excited. You understand why I'm just delighted that this gentleman, this man of God, has accepted the invitation to be a part of this program tonight. And so, Matters of Faith family, would you welcome with me, with enthusiasm, Reverend Dr. S. Wayne Stokeling, pastor of New Journey Church of Brooklyn and moderator of the and moderator of the New York Missionary Baptist Association. Amen. And so I pop in, and I'm glad to have you all here tonight. Now, my guest is late. I don't know where he is. He hasn't responded to my text, but I know he'll be here. So let me just set the stage for everybody. And by the way, welcome. I hope that you have, if you have not done it already, that you're planning to go out tomorrow and cast your vote. Please, ma'am, please, sir, most important thing that you can do probably in your lifetime right now. This is a very crucial time that we're living in right now. But let me share this with you. I just want to set the stage for everybody and set the platform for what we're going to be discussing. In this life, we will face many challenges and we'll have all kinds of obstacles. There's no doubt about that. Some of them will be psychological, they'll be physical, some of them will be spiritual, but they all present opportunities for great triumphs or devastating failures. Did you hear me? Psychological, physical, spiritual, emotional, financial opportunities for great triumphs or devastating failures. But I want to tell you this. Success is not measured by how many times you triumph. Success is measured in how you fail and continue to prosper or to continue to go on in spite of the failure. Like the Israelites, the Lord wants us to look back over our lives and recognize that all of our experiences were designed to humble and then to test us, just like it did them. But whether we are victorious or not, when we think back, we will see that it is not because of our power, our strength, or our might that has determined the outcomes that we have in our life. It is, as Moses wrote in this passage of scripture, to do you good in the end. Everything that we experience is designed so that God can do good to you in the end. That sets the stage, that puts us right where we're supposed to be, and that gives me a great opportunity to literally bring in my guest tonight, Dr. S. Wayne Stokely. He just popped in. He's on mute, so unmute yourself, my good brother, and there you are. Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. It's good to see you. How are you, my brother?
I'm wonderful. Just one moment, you said I'm on mute.
Nope, you're not anymore.
Oh,
You're not
great, great,
anymore. We hear
great,
you loud and clear.
great, great.
Five by five, my brother.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. I am truly doing great. I wanted to, this is an interesting night because, we're at a place in our history where, we're going to make history one way or another. One way
Yes.
or another, we are going to make history. So, um, I wanted to ask you. Last week, I asked you to tell us something about yourself that we didn't know and we really should know. But I'm going to ask you something specific. I read something in your resume. Your educational background is interesting to me. Can you talk a little bit about that? How did you wind up going to such prestigious institutions and doing some of the things that you've been able to accomplish in life? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, one of the one of the great things when I was there in Georgia, in my early high school and junior high, I was part of. They had special classes for people. Now in New York, they would be the STEM classes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and but we had ISCS and BSCS, and it was a way that they took what they considered were some of the children that showed promise, and they would put us in specialized classes,
Mm-hmm.
specialized teachers, and by the grace of God, He placed me in those things. And then when I graduated uh, high school, um, I had a chance to go to Morehouse. And when I came on campus, I had we had 1,600 was the SAT, and on my first try, I had 1,475. I had never made a B in my life. I had only made A's.
Mm.
But Morehouse had all of these students, but they all had they had pedigree.
Mm.
Fathers were big time preachers, or and things of that nature. So these children were put at the top of the line, given all the scholarships. And so Morehouse had offered me a scholarship. So I went to Mercer. So
Mm.
when I got to Mercer, I met Mercer was 98% white and 2% ethnic.
Mm.
When I came to Mercer, I met uh, students whose father were the big business persons in Georgia, big lawyers, big judges. So I met these persons, and they kept saying, "We're going to this school when we finish." And so when they kept saying that, I was like, okay. And so, and that's how I got to, I left after Mercer. I went to Georgia State, and then Georgia State at that time it was a very good school. And then, so I did a management master's. And then from there, one of the professors said, you should go to NYU. And I said, okay. So I came to New York, and one of the executive vice presidents of Sears and Roebuck's, the manufacturing arm, he was in um, he was in New York, and I saw him. I was walking down 42nd Street, and I saw him. Name was Mr. Fruhoff. So Mr. Fruhoff said, "Oh," he said, "don't worry." He said, "I'll look out for you when you go to NYU."
Mm.
So Mr. Fruhoff took me to NYU, and I paid $58 a year student activity
$58.
student activity fee. So to go to NYU, and then while I was at NYU, um, I met a gentleman. He was talking about this school called London School of Economics and Political Science, and it was supposed to be one of the great places where 4 or 5 what we were what we were called of the scholars that had won Nobel prizes,
Mm.
or um, Adam Smith, who was called the father of uh, what we call supply side economics.
Mm-hmm.
He had gone there and taught there. And so what I did, I said, wow. So I got on a plane and I flew to London, and I went there. And so, and then I got a chance to come there. Mathematical economics,
Mm.
that was um, one of my things. And so, well, there now I owe them a dissertation,
Mm.
and so, but I did a master's, and I did a PhD. I just owe them to finalize a dissertation, which I started working. And
Mm.
when I started working, um, I got a job with Mr. Raines. He was over Office of Budget and Management in Ronald Reagan's administration,
Mm.
and so he hired me. And there, I was charged with going all around the country, talking to farmers and other persons that he claimed needed some advice with their money. And so I would go in rooms where, to get in the room, you had to have 1 million $1 bills.
Mm.
So I was in Nashville, Tennessee, at the Gaylord Hotel, and I was doing a conference, and there was maybe 4 black persons in the room, myself and 3 other black farmers, and and a guy there, Henry Kravis, was at the Gaylord Hotel, and he saw all these people there. And then he came over and he said, I went to get something to eat. He came in, he said, um, great presentation. And I said, okay. I was a minister at that time, so it was
Mm-hmm.
easy to talk to a crowd. And so what he did, he said, would you consider coming to New York? I said, I said, I really want to go back. I said, I pastor a church in Georgia, and I really want to get a good job there and take care of my church and everything. He said, well, what I'll do is that I know you will be able to go every Sunday if you wanted to your church. He said,
Mm-hmm.
fly down and my company would pay for it. And I said, wow. So then he wrote a number. This is like 1983, 1984. He wrote a number on a piece of paper. He said, that is what I would pay you. He
Mm.
said, I would give you a condo on York Avenue. And I didn't know where York Avenue was in New York, but he said, on York Avenue, he said, and I'll make sure that you be okay. And so that's how I got to New York. And that's how I started working as an investment banker. And I
And
KKR.
wow. So 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 you started as a good student. You wound up going through what we call STEM, right? The
Yes,
when I
yes,
was growing up as a kid, they call it exceptional classes and stuff like
yes,
that. But it was nurtured. You were able to be nurtured. And then to Morehouse. Now you didn't finish, you said, did you finish Morehouse too?
no, I didn't know.
That's
Morehouse
that's
wanted
Morehouse
Morehouse
went over to let
wanted
me see
thirty
if I got
two
it right.
hundred dollars.
Cursor.
Yeah, Morehouse wanted $3,200,
Oh, okay.
but they had all of the like Martin Luther King Jr.
Right.
would have been in my graduating class,
Uh,
and these guys they had grade point averages like 2.1, 2.2, but they was on scholarship, and I told the guy, I said that's unfair.
hmm.
I said that's unfair. I said you have at that time. I well I scored in my little area. And there's very few people who had an SAT score of 1,475 out of
Right.
60 and an A average. And
Hmm.
you wanted, and Columbia University found out I wanted to be a preacher. So they withdrew the scholarship
Got you.
that they had offered me. They said, you're going to be a minister. That's it. And we aren't looking for that. They wanted me to become a doctor.
Hmm.
And so that was the thing. So Morehouse wanted me to pay. Mercer gave me 100% scholarship. I
Oh,
went to Mercer. So
okay.
I went to Mercer.
That's kind of like a no-brainer, isn't it?
Right, right. So it's in Georgia State, 100% scholarship. I paid $58 a year to
Hmm.
go to NYU.
Now I went to NYU. I took one class and
Okay.
then took one class. I said, I cannot afford to go to NYU because that one class was, let's see, you said you paid 58. I paid probably 50 times that amount
Okay. Okay.
for one class. For
And it
one,
was crazy. And they was crazy,
absolutely.
right. And I was at Stearns, and um, most of the persons, their companies were paying their tuition.
Hmm.
So Mr. Fruhall, even though I wasn't working for Sears and Roebuck at that time,
Right.
I came in as if I was working for Sears and Roebuck. But my grades were good enough that where they gave me a scholarship.
That's a wonderful thing. And it's interesting because, my question, right? The question I've asked tonight, in what ways can we demonstrate that we are living in the overflow of blessings promised to our ancestors? That's the question, right? In relationship to the article that I wrote, of course, living in the overflow. But in what ways can we demonstrate that we are living in the overflow of blessings promised to our ancestors? Because I would argue, and I've been doing that in that article that I've written, that where we are today, what we have today, the opportunities that are presented to us today are because of promises that were made to our ancestors who did not have these opportunities. And now we do. So our demonstration of our appreciation is really in the activities that we perform and the things that we do today. That's the way I would say, that's the way we would show our appreciation and that we are truly living in the overflow. And what you've described in terms of your life and the things that you've been able to do and educationally and accomplish and be the minister that you are and the accomplishments that you made in ministry is not I mean the blessing that the Lord gave you educationally, intellectually, may not have ever come to you had it not been for the sacrifices that were made with our ancestors. And you
I
were
agree.
to take advantage of every one of them. That's the thing that I'm looking at. That's a great thing because you were
I,
able to do that.
I agree. And it it was it was so funny. I told this story. I was preaching. My grandfather used to ask me to come home um, when I was at Mercer. He would say, "Come to dinner." So I would come to dinner, and then what he would do, he would tell me great. So one day I had come to dinner, and it started storming,
Mm,
and he said, um, we had the phone, but it was a party line.
hmm. Right, 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 right.
So I was on 75 and I was driving. It was storming cats and dogs, and I called home and collect. But when you call collect, you had to say what was going on because I had to call him every time I would get back to
Mm,
campus. I would have to call him and say made it back. I wouldn't say that's all I would say. Made it home safely, and we didn't get charged for long distance.
hmm.
I told him, I said, it's rain and cats and dogs. And then he told me this. He said, call me back. So then when I called him back, he he said, uh, ride out the storm. That's all he said. Right. He said, ride out the storm. And I was preaching a sermon to a group of people, and I told them, sometimes you find yourself in a storm, just ride it out. And I gave that credit to him. So life, what it did for me, it I've never been racist, but I have had racial incidents. I was never racist. I would never one would say, "Oh, I just hate Caucasians. I just hate this," because everywhere I would go, I was surrounded, Dr. Russell, by Caucasians.
Mm,
Like I have three. Well, they're not natural, but I have three Caucasian nieces.
mm,
I have four Caucasian nephews.
mm,
That I'm saying they aren't just Caucasian when we're in private. I mean, they're not. That's not my niece and nephew when
mm,
we're in private. They make it known that this is my uncle.
mm,
And so what it did for me, it allowed me to blend in at NYU, blend in at London School of Economics, blend in, and the people would look and say, "Wow," because I came in the '70s, well, the '80s when racial things were high, and I wasn't an Uncle Tom, you
mm,
know, but I was one of those that the church kept me rooted to my ancestors because Dr. Russell, I believe, if I had not been in the church, I would have been one of those business person that you meet every day. He's too good for the church, and then the Lord kept me grounded.
mm,
And, I mean, he kept me so rooted to the church that even right now, and it is tough. And when I was reading your article, I I saw what you last week. I saw what you were reaching to us for. See, that is the problem now. See, I'm not a person like the people there getting ready to vote, and it was just hard for me because from a business standpoint, I met Donald Trump. From a business standpoint, I haven't met a Kamala Harris, but because of my of being back and forth to Los Angeles, and we had an office in San Francisco, our company did, that I would meet families that were affected by, son had an ounce of weed and he got 20 years. And he got 20 years. So
Mhm.
I'm sitting there and and this election, what it is creating for me is one where when I talk about my faith, so I don't have a nationalistic faith.
Mhm.
I don't have a capitalist faith. I have a faith, I think, that when you say matters of faith, I have a faith that is based on the fact that I know what he has done. And when you say my ancestors, um, Denmark Vesey and those persons, see, I was not a Frederick Douglass type of person
Mhm.
because I never thought that at any time when I was there, I knew I would marry. Uh, I knew I would marry a woman of color. I knew that.
Mhm.
But when most of my colleagues, they were marrying women of non-color
Mhm.
because they were saying that as much money as we make and where we're trying to go, sister wouldn't understand.
Mhm.
But because of my ancestors, I couldn't do it.
Mhm.
Maybe that's crazy, but because of them, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't. And maybe I hope I don't turn off your audience, but I just couldn't do it.
Mhm.
I mean, I couldn't do it. And then, but I have I have performed weddings where I'm the only person of color in the room. I've gone to weddings of my friends and my buddies. They have married. Um, I mean, they the the bride it's not ethnic. The groom isn't ethnic, and I've gone. I've stayed to the end, had a great time. But because of my ancestors, I always would say that this is what they would require of me. They would require me to be the best that I possibly could be, and yet don't feel the only way I can be the best that I can be, I have to deny uh, my ethnicity. And maybe that's not a good maybe that's not a good subject. That's not a good subject, but I never denied my ethnicity.
Well, I mean, I think, interesting. Well, let me go back a little bit because I grew up in the South,
Okay.
grew up in the South Bronx. So we ain't had no, use
You
my
got me. You
use
got
my
me.
Southern accent. We ain't had no white folks in our neighborhood, we weren't subject to segregation per se,
Hmm.
subject to de facto segregation because
Okay.
you went to school where you lived at. And nobody in my neighborhood were Anglo.
Hmm.
Everybody was black.
Yes.
In fact, we didn't have at that time, they were probably, I could count the Dominicans on a hand. And Puerto Ricans were there, but they weren't there in proliferation. So most of them were just us. And
Okay.
so the ones that the Caucasians that we came in contact with, most of them were the teachers and the administrators at the schools and things like that. We didn't intermingle with them. In fact, there was probably more segregation here in the Northeast than there was in the South. Because in the South, there was cross-pollination all the time. Wasn't like that in my neighborhood. And so now we did have a couple of Anglo families in the community. One lived right across the street from me. Now they were mixed, but they're complected. They may even be listening tonight because they're my best friends. My
Okay.
best friends. and Peter and Bob, those are my ace boom cooms. In fact, when my mother passed away, Bob was right there. I mean, he was standing right beside me. So he's
Mm.
been some of the most challenging times I've ever had in my life. And we're still friends. I was in his wedding, he was in mine.
There you are.
We go back, and we've been
Right.
since I was 5 years old, literally
And,
5 years old. So
and
we've been
see,
all of our lives. But here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. And I didn't get a chance to interact and engage with people who weren't not of my ethnic background until I literally went to work. School didn't do it because I went to Lehman. Lehman College is right here in the Bronx. I went to then I went to work at Manhattan State Hospital. Yeah, well, it was like going to school. There was a lot of people of color, and some, some people who weren't, but they were most of the administrators. So we didn't do a lot of interacting. Even the unions, and I was a union rep. The union was predominantly minority folk, so there wasn't a whole lot of that. I started meeting them when I went to work in the insurance industry and started to intermingle with them a lot more frequently. Um, then as my life progressed, I got to meet with a lot more of them and interacted with them a lot more. Yes, I've been to various ceremonies and weddings and things like that, and all of those things. And it's interesting because what I found out, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, or your experiences may be a little bit different than mine, but in my experience, I found them to be just people like me. They just
yes,
different experience growing up. And so, but once you understand that my background's a little bit different from theirs, but I know their culture. I know it well because I grew up in it,
yes,
right? Everything in our society is based upon the culture that they establish in this nation. I know what their culture is. I know what they expect. I know what they do. In fact, I watch so much television. That's how I learned to speak so well because I watched television and I learned
okay,
diction and articulation. And I did that. That was my learning tool. But what I found out, they don't know anything about my culture.
no,
Nothing. Nothing. And they don't have to.
Wha-
Our culture is a quote unquote a subculture that they don't have to understand, but when they do, they're like, "Wow, you you ain't much different than me." I told you that the Lord made us one. We just have different complexions because we come from different places and we have different pigmentations and we have differences that make us not so that we can scatter, but so that we can be together. That's why,
amen.
that's my opinion. That's where I see it. And so um, ride out the storm. I like that statement.
Well, see, when we were speaking at one time, because I love the fact that many of person would say, "Oh, well, I'm in this frat,
Hmm.
I'm this," but very few would say, "I'm in the Lions Club,
Mm.
in the Rotary, I'm a Rotarian." So you look and you're saying, if you were in these blended clubs,
Hmm.
they would they would have more to offer, but I stay away from that because that's how I get in trouble sometimes. Because the person would say, "Oh, you just you didn't do this," and then I'm looking up the district leader of the Rotarian is a brother. Do you know how? Do you know uh, if the gentlemen that I was meeting, they would they would give their right arm to be the um, the district leader of a Rotarian of and you one of the most prestigious one in the country. You in the Northeast,
Yep.
and that's you. But just a humble. You're just a humble if you want to be. And that's the thing. When I'm talking to the young people, and I'm telling them, I'm saying, this is how you this is how you advance yourself. This is how um I don't think you could throw a sign on Wall Street and someone would understand. But if you walk in and you're a member of the Lions Club, you're a member of the Rotarians, they know who you are. They would know how to interact with you. And so I'm in bad shape there. And sometimes, it's it's broadening my perspective, and in broadening my perspective, I had to keep reminding myself that my ancestors, they were not telling me deny your ethnicity. They kept saying that your ethnicity has to be expounded upon when you meet people of non-color. You yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's just you know that my life, I became a Rotarian some 20 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm the immediate past district governor. My tenure just ended June 30th of this year.
Wow.
So my this was my celebration. We did my conference at Yankee Stadium.
Wow.
So this district in the Northeast has 58 clubs in it.
Wow. Wow.
From Staten Island, Manhattan, the Bronx, Westchester, and Bermuda. And Bermuda. We are the most diversified district in the world. We have more ethnic diversity in this district than anywhere in the world.
That's
It was
amazing.
I've been the president of the club that I'm with 3 times. And I'm the 11th district governor to come out of my club. And I'm the first African American to ever serve as a district governor in this district in over 100 years.
Wow. But
because
uh,
because you didn't know that. I'm you didn't know that. I'm sharing it because it's interesting because when I say I'm a Rotarian to people of color, they have no idea what I'm talking about. They don't know the recognition that comes along
yes.
with that role. And to
Yes.
governor, which is there's 514 districts around the world. Around the world. There's 1.4 million Rotarians. And to be the district governor of one of them, 514, that means that you are one out of 1.4 million.
Yes.
There's only 514 of you any given year.
Right. Right. And can I'm going to be silly, but and you come into a Rotarians meeting, there's probably 50 to $100 million in those. I'm saying the members. That's a lot of
Oh,
money.
oh
That's
well,
a lot of money.
we give away over
Yes.
$100 million a year
Yes.
worldwide.
Right.
And I felt strongly about that. So one of the things that I did, by the way, let me just share with you.
And I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I
No,
hope I'm
it's
not
okay
getting up.
because this is really the kind of stuff that I really want to address in this topic, right? Living in the overflow, because
yes.
there would be no way in the world that any one of us could be a Rotarian 50 years ago.
Right.
Wouldn't happen. So to be the district governor is like, people, what? You're a district governor. Now, that doesn't mean much when we talk about it in our circles, but when we talk about it beyond that. So what I did, one of the things, by the way, we have, you have clubs, you have districts, and you have zones.
Okay.
In our zone, which comprises clubs from this area here, which I just mentioned, all the way to Canada and all the way out to Washington.
Hmm.
We are the number one district in membership growth for 4 consecutive years. 4 consecutive years, we've led the zone in membership growth. It's amazing. In my year, I started 3 clubs, right? Various areas. And one of them, which was my dream, and it still is, was a club in the South Bronx. It's called the South Bronx Rotary Club. And I started it right across the street from where I grew up.
Wow.
Because I said that we need to be able to access the resources that are available through organizations like the Rotary to bring
Yes.
those resources to the table. We have student exchanges. We send students around the world, and we receive students from other parts of the world. And they go places and they learn other cultures, and they can be educated in different places. We give money away. We build wells. We oh my God, just the plethora of things that are done. We went to Bermuda, and in Bermuda we helped clean up the seashore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, such amazing things, and that the money that we contribute to the foundation's goal is to have $2 billion by 2030. $2 billion by 2030.
$2 billion.
We are starting now. We've been for the last 30 years or so, we've been on a push to eradicate polio around the world. Now, as you know, polio, there's only a handful of people with polio around the world right now. And we partnered with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And
Mm-hmm.
for every dollar that we gave, they gave another. Like 2 for 1.
Mm-hmm.
And so Bill and Melinda Gates had a vision that they wanted to do this, but they could not do it themselves because they needed boots on the ground. The Rotary became the boots on the ground to get it done. So we went to the countries, we put vaccinations into the mouths of these boys and girls so that they would not have polio growing up.
Mm-hmm.
There's like 5 people in the world with polio,
Uh,
most
uh,
eradicated, completely.
Now, my father-in-law, he had polio,
Mm,
and yes, that's and when my wife she talks about it, um, he worked for the railroad,
mm,
and because he had a very good job at that time for someone growing up in the 40s and the 50s, and he worked, but he was afflicted by
mm.
polio. And sometimes when we meet families that have children who have some type of disability, we are over we're overly conscious of
Yes.
that, and we try to make let them know that we share that. But what you see when you talk about the Rotarian, you talk about the Lions, people look, and I say to people, I said, these are necessary organizations.
Mhm.
No, now they are doing things that uh, that you that you hear about, but they don't wave the flag. They just get the work done, and I love it.
And it's interesting. One of the viewers tonight, Janita, I just met Janita just a couple of weeks ago. We talked. She says, I am Bermudian and was
Mm,
an exchange student and am now a Rotarian. Well done,
what?
Brother Lauren, for your great work. So, this thing is so dynamic. And if we're, by the way, let me just do back. Let me back off for a second. This is really interesting, right? When I was when I
It
was
is.
when I was we do what they call we call it PELS now. It was President Elect Training. They called it PETS, President Elect Training. Now it's President Elect Learning, PELS.
Mm-hmm.
We had this in Whippany, New Jersey, and so we had a training session. It was a few days,
Yes.
and so each district governor has a hospitality suite. So I set my hospitality suite up. Now, this is what I'm talking about in terms of being able to share your culture, not being ashamed of who you are, right? Because
Mhm.
who you are is significant. It makes
Yes,
a difference. I set my room up and I put my history. I had books of history there. I took some from my library. I
right,
had kente cloth across the bed. I had all kind of African artifacts around so that people could see where I come from and they could experience my culture.
right,
So that I'm not embarrassed about who I am. In fact, you need to know who I am. So there were books there, Martin Luther King, and the people that they never heard. I had some of my pictorial books, the big black book with a whole lot of black history in it, so people could see that. And it wasn't that I was trying to pound them or beat them. I just wanted to expose them to who we are because we've been in this world a long, long time.
yes,
There's nothing to be ashamed of. And so I want to be proud of who I am and say, we are now sitting at the table.
yes,
We are at the table. You're not going to ignore us anymore. We're not going to be ignored. We're going to be appreciated like we appreciate you.
right,
Culture is significant. And so,
yes.
by the way, our hospitality suite was the most visited suite of all. Everybody came by. And it was, I mean, they can now I'm a preacher. I don't drink.
Mhm.
Some people do.
Yes, yes.
What we did was one of the gentlemen in my district, I love Eric. Eric makes this drink that they make in the Bahamas. This what is it called? Janita, you can probably tell me if you can remember it. I can't think of the name of it, but it's a drink that they make, and he can make it extremely well. They made that drink. People came for that drink. We had a wonderful time. We had
Yes,
wonderful fellowship. And it was great because that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be able to come together, that our differences don't make us worse, it makes us better.
yes.
And my theme, we had a theme, an international theme that we used based upon the governor, the president of the Rotary. He had a theme, and so we used that theme. But I had a theme for myself, and my theme was not me, but we. Not me, but we. And the whole year, every time I went to a club, because you have to visit every club, every club that I visited, they heard me say, "It's not about me, it's we."
Mhm.
And my statement that you heard me say, and I said it last week when I ended my show, I say it every week, I love you, and there's absolutely nothing that you can do about it.
Right, right, right.
I said that at every single meeting I went to because I want them to understand that I am who I am. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm Reverend Dr. J. Lauren Russell, and they know that. There's nothing to be ashamed of.
That's
We
awesome.
are a grand people. And so when we bring us to the table, we make the table better.
I agree. I
And
agree.
the promise that was given to us that came from our ancestors, who did not have the opportunity to have all of these things happen for us and to us. But now we do.
Yes,
Now we do. And
yes,
beauty of who we are.
yes. See, when you, these are the conversations that sometimes, as opposed to um, everything centered on activism.
Yes.
This is activistic, but it's so positive that sometimes, since we are preachers, I can say that the devil doesn't want this type of positive influence. He wants us to come out and talk about what this person did and how we're barred from the table. He doesn't want to come in and say, "Well, I just went in my room and I showed my culture through my room,"
Right.
and he doesn't want that. He wants you to. He would have wanted you to be out there screaming, "No justice, no peace," and you said, "There's a time for that."
Absolutely.
But this isn't the
Right,
time.
right, right. And that's so right. And we're at the top of the hour. I'm gonna go to the top of our stuff. And
Okay.
but you said something very, very significant, very important, because I've always believed I'm not the I'll march when necessary, but I'd
Mhm.
rather sit at the table. I want to be at the
Yes.
I want to be
Yes.
where we can sit and we can talk and we can come to an agreement to make a difference. If we can't do that, then we got a problem, because if I'm just there rebel rousing, and I'm not, this is not to denigrate anybody. No,
Mhm.
because everything is important. Every blessing that we get is important. Wherever it comes from, I'm with that. But I want to sit at the table. I want to be the person sitting at the table. I want to be there to say, no, no, we can't do it that way. This is the way we need to do it, and this is why we need to do it that way, and negotiate for those things so that everybody benefits. So it's not just a few who were loud and boisterous, but everybody gets the benefit. And you sit down at the table and you write that agreement, you put it in writing, you
Yes.
make it real. And then
Yes.
and then we're sitting at the table. If I'm sitting at the table, you have to recognize me.
Yes.
I've learned over the years that if you're not at the table, you don't have to be considered,
No.
because they don't know you. As I said earlier, they don't know who we are.
Yeah.
They don't know our culture. They don't know essentially sometimes what we actually brought to the table, because we
Yeah.
hadn't been sitting at the table. So when we get to the table, we got to bring our wares and say, look, this is what I come with. It. Here it is.
Yes.
Here it is. You can't take from me what I'm giving to you, what I'm giving
That's
you.
that's awesome. And
Can't. So
and
so let's do this. I'm gonna, and you can do likewise. I'm gonna disappear for a moment. We're gonna go back. I'm gonna recognize our sponsors and advertisers. I'm gonna read
okay.
again. We're gonna ask the challenge question. We're gonna look back and so too. Oh, about it, that was a rum swizzle or rum punch. Plant.
Okay.
That's what she was talking about. But that, yeah, but it was something else, a Bermudian, something or another, Janita, something or another. But I'm going to come back with that. We're going to come back, and after we read the article and we've done some other things, and we'll come back and we'll finish off the second half of our show tonight. So thank you all for watching, and we'll be right back. So stay tuned. Please don't forget our sponsors and advertisers, the JLR Company and J. Lauren Russell Consulting LLC, for all of your church financial consulting needs. You need a church loan, you need the trustees to be trained, you need biblical economic training, you need personal loan reduction strategies, property development, property maintenance. Remember, it's not about the castle, it's about the kingdom. Reach out to us. Email us at jlaurenr@jlr.llc. That's JLORENR@jlr.llc. Or simply give us a telephone call at 718-328-8096. That's 718-328-8096. Matters of Faith, the book. You can use our Cash App to obtain it. Just $ Matters of Faith. The book is $24.15. That includes shipping and handling. You can send your check or money order to the JLR Company, Post Office Box 301, New York, New York 10035. That's Post Office Box 301, New York, New York 10035. You can also get it as an ebook by going to www.smashwords.com/books/view/993177. That's www.smashwords.com/books/view/993-177. Check out the Eat Okra app for all black-owned restaurants all over the nation. That's right, Eat Okra. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share our Matters of Faith YouTube channel. That's the Matters of Faith, the radio show YouTube channel. And last but not least, get your subscription to Better Mag magazine today. A 2-year subscription is only $27.50, and you can get that by going to www.abettermag.com. That's www.abettermag.com. And now the article, Living in the Overflow. I've sent that link out to many of you. You got it directly. If you did not receive it, that article can be found in my social media links, J. Lauren Russell, Matters of Faith, Facebook group, and Facebook pages. You can also find it on X, formerly known as Twitter, It can also be found in the Yonkers Insider online newspaper, www.yonkersinsider.blogspot.com. It is also found in Better Mag magazine, www.abettermag.com. That's www.abettermag.com. The column can also be found in Pamela's Big Heart newsletter, Living in the Overflow. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verses 11 through 18, New King James Version. Beware that you do not forget the Lord your God by not keeping his commandments, his judgments, and his statutes, which I command you today, lest, when you have eaten and are full, and have built beautiful houses and dwell in them, and when your herds and your flocks multiply, and your silver and your gold are multiplied, and all that you have is multiplied, when your heart is lifted up, and you forget the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage, who led you through that great and terrible wilderness, in which were fiery serpents and scorpions, and thirsty land, where there was no water, who brought water for you out of the flinty rock, who fed you in the wilderness with manna, which your fathers did not know, that he might humble you, and that he might test you, to do you good in the end. Then you say in your heart, my power and the might of my hand have gained me this wealth. And you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he swore to your fathers, as it is this day. Living in the overflow. What are your earliest memories? Do you remember the first time you walked, or the first words you spoke? What about the time you learned to tie your own shoes? Very few, if anyone, can remember any of those instances, but we can remember our parents telling us not to touch the fire or we will get burned. Well, to be honest, we probably don't remember that either, but we do know that we learned that lesson. We make it a point not to touch hot surfaces. Many of the things we learned in our early life, whether we remember them or not, were taught to us to prepare us for future blessings. Moses is instructing the children of Israel, challenging them to remember what they had been taught about God's commandments, judgments, and his statutes. The blessings prepared for them in the promised land were pledged to their ancestors and are not that different from the blessings planned for the followers of Christ today. We are challenged to remember the lessons we were taught in the same way as the Israelites. The promise then and the promise now is an abundance of everything. Beautiful houses that we will occupy. Herds and flocks of animals will be multiplied, and silver and gold will be increased exponentially. Sometimes we fool ourselves into thinking, just like the Israelites, that it is our power and the might of our hand that have gained us this wealth. The land the children of Israel were about to inherit and the wealth they were about to acquire was not because of something they deserved nor earned. Remembering past experiences helps to prevent the tendency to forget who made all blessings possible. For the children of Israel, there was the likelihood of getting puffed up with pride, forgetting who brought them out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage, who led them through that great and terrible wilderness, in which were fiery serpents and scorpions and thirsty land, where there was no water, who brought water for them out of the flinty rock, who fed them in the wilderness with manna, which their fathers did not know. The same tendencies are with believers today. Like the Israelites, we have been brought over and through some tough times, times that are a part of a test that prepares us for the good God will do for us in the end. They were about to experience a blessing from the Lord God who gives them power to get wealth. They needed to know that they were living in the overflow of God's grace that resulted from his covenant which he swore to their fathers, that he may establish his covenant which he swore to their fathers, as it is this day. The easy to read Bible translate that same verse as he is doing today. Doing today is remembering the overflowing blessings after coming out of the wilderness experience. Doing today is remembering the carryover of blessings they received from the promises made to their ancestors. Doing today is the overflow of blessings for today's believers to do you good in the end, just as the Lord promised. Be blessed. And now my question for the last time tonight. In what ways can we demonstrate that we are living in the overflow of blessings promised to our ancestors? Let me ask that question again. In what ways can we demonstrate that we are living in the overflow of blessings promised to our ancestors? We are standing at the precipice of a crucial day on tomorrow, a day that will change the course of history, one way or another. Here's a very special message from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that he delivered in 1964, but we're going to apply it to 2024.
Suffice it to say that we stand in one of the most momentous periods of human history. And in these days of emotional tension, when the problems of the world are gigantic in extent and chaotic in detail, all men of goodwill must make the right decisions. And on Tuesday, 1 week from today, the people of this nation must decide whether they want America to remain true to the great words of the founding fathers. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We must decide whether those words will be firmly etched into the structure of our nation, or whether we will allow our nation to be relegated to a second-rate power in the world with no moral voice. We must decide next Tuesday whether America will take the high road of justice and peace and compassion for the poor and underprivileged, or whether this nation will tread the low road of man's inhumanity to man, of injustice, of short-sightedness. And each of us has a moral responsibility, if we are of voting age and if we are registered, to participate in that decision. I come here to urge every person under the sound of my voice to go to the polls on the 3rd of November and vote your convictions. Now, I know you're intelligent people, and I don't need to tell you who you should vote for. I don't have any fear about that. You know who to vote for. I'm just asking you to vote. Now, just if you need, very seriously, never before in the history of our nation has a candidate for the presidency taken such a negative stand on the demands of our Judeo-Christian heritage for justice and understanding, goodwill, and compassion for the poor and peace. And so all men of goodwill will go to the polls on November the 3rd. And I hope we will have a great day in our nation, so that when we wake up on the 4th of November, we will know that America has made the right decision.
I am so glad that we have Reverend Dr. S. Wayne Stokely as our guest again tonight for the second week in a row, the first time that's ever happened on Matters of Faith. Tonight we sit on the precipice of an extremely important day. Tomorrow, history will be made one way or another. But my guest, Reverend Dr. S. Wayne Stokely, pastor, has been changing the course of people's lives all of his life, most particularly as a man of God. And so, Matters of Faith family, would you welcome with me again for the second half of this show tonight, my very special guest, again I say, Reverend Dr. S. Wayne Stokely.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome, my brother. I'm gonna
I,
stop that now.
I'm
Uh,
honored.
Go ahead. I know you want to say something about that video, because that video could have been made yesterday.
Yes, yes. I, that it is proven that he was a prophet. Just someone that was before his, the zeitgeist would say, yes, he's in his 60s, but his truths that he's speaking, they're timeless.
Absolutely. Now
Time,
let me tell you something else about that
help me.
that statement that was sent to me
Mm,
by a friend who happens to be a Rotarian in Bermuda.
wow.
Yeah, how you like that?
So the whole world is looking at Miss
The
Harris
world is watching.
and Mr. Trump.
And interestingly enough, glad that you said that. The world is watching. As ambassadors of Christ, those of us who believe, people are always watching you.
Mhm.
Everything that you do, every word that you speak, people are watching, because they're watching. Because, as a friend of mine told me once, if anything happened to you, I don't know what's going to happen to me. So they're watching to see how we're going to respond to all of these things going on in our lives, in and around us, and whether or not those things are going to crush our spirits. Because if they crush our spirits,
Oh,
then
God.
what happens to those who don't have a constitution as strong as ours? And I don't mean the Constitution of the United States. I mean the Constitution that exists within, that represents the relationship that we have with the Lord. If we don't stand up for what we believe, and we're not showing the inheritance, if we're not exemplifying the legacy that we've inherited, what
Yes.
hope do other people have at all?
Right. Yes.
I mean, it's all everything that we do, there's no isolations. There's no like, okay, I'll do this over here, but over here I'm somebody else. There was a minister. I'm not going to mention the person's name,
Mhm.
but chastised the black church over something that he saw as anti-God when it came to this election. Now, you know, it's interesting. When you're living in a glass house,
Yes.
throw stones.
Right. Right.
When you're not cleaning up and looking at what's in your own front yard, you can't come over in my yard and sweep up.
Right.
Take care of your own business. But to judge an entire group of people based upon an interpretation that you have,
Yes.
what gives you the right to do that?
Mm.
What gives you the right to say that your perspective, that is based on a lot of fallacious reasoning,
Mhm.
is right?
Right.
What gives you that right? You don't have the right to do that. And so I wouldn't justify or validate by mentioning that person's name, but everybody knows who it is. But I wouldn't talk, because I don't think that kind of a comment bears to be repeated, nor does it have any validity to it.
Okay.
But we've got to, again, we've got to look at who we are, and present ourselves at the table,
Agreed.
so that those kinds of comments are not made. Those comments are made in vacuums, because you don't know who you're talking to.
Right.
If you did, you would never say such a thing.
Yes.
Because our conservative approach to our faith is second to none in the world. We believe what we believe in our God because we know where he's brought us from.
Yes.
When we look back over our lives, we
Yes.
know that it had not been for God on our side, we would have never been where we are today.
Right.
And it doesn't matter where in the world you come from. The Lord has been able to bring us safely through.
Yes.
So
yes. It is frightening when, I mean, like, I just shook my head even when one of our former presidents, he said, black men, they don't vote.
mm,
And I said, wow, what a blanket statement from a very brilliant man. But sometimes we make silly comments because there are a lot of black men who are campaigning for Miss Harris in such a way they're sitting there. They're unafraid of what it looks like. They've been doing this. But because when you came to us to town and they didn't make it where it was standing room only in the room that you were in, you were offended. So it wasn't that there aren't any black men who are voting. It's that we are just not, we're not participants in the herd mentality. Right. We don't come because you ring the bell.
Right.
We come because we have a conviction within us that on tomorrow, however, there will be tons of men of color who are going to pull that thing for Kamala Harris. And he isn't doing it because the former president said this is the right thing to do. Because they sat there. We were upset with you for a moment because you acted as if you were not going to endorse her. You know, we waited for almost a month for you to endorse her. And where we thought the minute the Democrat put her on the ticket, you should have had one of your private meetings and said, I'm going to go out here and vote for you. You were making it seem, you were not a great cheerleader for her. And so many of us discounted what you had to say. And like that minister, it's the same. It's like when your agendas are so self in like a self endorsement,
self-serving,
self-serving. Thank you. They're so self-serving that you don't have that kind of right, and you rarely go to church. You rarely go to church, and so, but you want to judge the church, something that you are really not a true participant in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's interesting, right? I'm glad that you mentioned that this statement was made. Now, and I want to say this because I want to do some teaching. There are some states in our nation where if you have a felony conviction, you can't vote. Right? You've lost your right to vote. Now, I see that is an indefinite punishment that you can never outlive. I see that as being, excessive, too excessive. Because if you've paid your debt to society,
yes,
you ought to regain your citizenship.
Agree.
So you can vote. Just to be clear, in New York State, that does not exist. You can vote in New York State if you have served your penalty, you have paid your debt to society. You're not on probation. You're not on parole. You're free. You can vote. Now, some people think that they can't vote in New York State because they have a felony conviction. That's not true in New York State. Now, there's some other states, it is true.
Yes.
But that's one of the fights that we need to have. When I think about, How do we exhibit ourselves? How do we demonstrate that we are living in the overflow of blessings promised to our ancestors? Well, that's one of them. We have to fight the good fight and figure out what it is that we need to be fighting for. So nationally, we need to be, because remember that the penal system was based upon and has been inhabited by a whole lot of people who are people of color.
Yes.
So essentially, you've taken a lot of people out of the ability to participate in society because you gave them a life sentence. Even after they finished paying their debt to society, they would still suffer from the same crime that they may have committed when they were children.
Yes.
Right? Because they were charged as adults. That's a problem in our country that we have to address. Because if we do not, then we are participants in the lifetime punishment to someone who has literally paid their debt to society. If you're saying to me that you cannot vote ever because you have a felony, then I can't participate in my own well-being. I can't work for the federal government. I can't participate in my own well-being. So you've taken those things away from me. So now I have to struggle financially, economically, and otherwise, or find another way to prosper myself, but I can never participate in this system that we call democracy. There's something wrong with that.
Yes, there is.
And if we're not fighting that fight, we have an issue. I have an issue. I don't care, as we talked about earlier, it doesn't matter what your skin tone is.
Yes.
Everybody needs to fight that fight because that's wrong across the board.
Yes.
What's right and wrong is wrong.
Yes.
You know, the idea that slavery was never truly ended is a problem for me, because the 13th Amendment did not abolish slavery. And nobody's fighting that fight. Now, what do I mean? If you have never read the 13th Amendment, you need to read it, because it says it will be outlawed. First of all, it was for those states that were in rebellion to the Union, right? Mm-hmm. So if you were in rebellion to the Union, then all of your slaves were set free. But if you were not in rebellion to the Union, your slaves were still yours to keep. That's number one. Number two, it said, except if you're incarcerated. If you're incarcerated, slavery is still legal. That's why they pay an incarcerated person 25 cents a day and work you like a slave, work you like a dog.
Yes.
Because you're still enslaved. Nobody's fighting that fight. I have a problem with that, because it wasn't truly abolished. And it's right, it's clear as day, it's right there in the 13th Amendment. Well, we have to do something about that. Those are the good fights, because you can't have equality in a nation. You can't have equity in a nation where you consistently keep people at a lower level. No matter what they do, they can never come up. That's a caste system. It is a way of depressing people and never allowing them to come up. Redlining did the same thing, right? That was outlawed, but for a long time, it was real. A lot of people don't even know what redlining is. Redlining, for those of you who don't know, was simply the act that the government put in place that prevented people of color from buying homes in certain areas of the country. And so they had to buy their homes. This was after World War II with the GI Bill. They had to come, they bought homes in areas in which they could buy them, which were the low income areas. And those homes did not appreciate in value. When the economy went through a boom, their properties actually decreased in value because, location.
Yes.
And so they weren't able to leverage their homes to send their children to colleges and universities that you were talking about, Brother Stokely, that where unless you got a scholarship and you paid $58 a year to go to NYU, but if you had to pay, you couldn't pay that house tuition because you couldn't leverage your home to do it. But what they did in these other communities here in New York, there was Levittown, there was Hicksville, there was all these places out in Long Island and stuff that their property values skyrocketed, and they were able to access the equity in their homes and send their children to those wonderful universities, Dartmouth and other things. And they came out and they became Wall Street bankers and Wall Street brokers, and they made millions and millions of dollars, but
Yes.
they did it because they were able to participate in the American system. We were summarily and legally prevented from doing it.
Yes.
People of color, and people of color in this country really meant black. It really meant black, because other people who came into the country, they were treated like immigrants, and immigrants were given certain privileges, which we as native to America were not granted those privileges. And so I have a problem when we don't address those issues as being real issues. And when no one's addressing it, we have people elected into public offices at every level, but we're not fighting the fight that's going to bring equity, not equality. Equality just means that everybody got a little bit. Equity means that I've got what I'm supposed to have.
Yes.
Right? I'm not just getting a little piece. I'm getting the amount that puts us at the same level. That's what I need. I need to be at the same level as everybody else. Equity,
Yes.
not equality. Equality was a way in which they used that system to kind of keep us here, because they said, well, you got something. Aren't you happy now? You got to. You could ride on the front of the bus. You should be happy with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I can't buy a house. Well,
Right.
yes, you can, but you can only buy it over there.
Right.
You can get that house over there, but that house falling apart. I can't even
Yes.
buy insurance. In fact, my insurance costs more in the lower incomes areas. I'll make me an example. My credit rating is excellent.
Mm-hmm.
I still pay more for my car insurance because of where I chose to live.
Mm.
And they say, well, you live here. So what? So what? But insurance companies can get away with that because they lump it together. It's just like they did when I was growing up. I was not living in a segregated community, but it was de facto segregation. So you are de facto charging me more because of where I choose to live. I choose to build up the community that I grew up in by purchasing a home and owning a home in the South Bronx, in my community. Yet all of the services that I need in order to grow, they cost me more.
Yes.
It's the same thing. But
Yes.
fighting that fight. Nobody's even talking about those things. That disturbs me.
Yes.
I don't always talk about it on Matters of Faith, but because of you last week, I told you lit a fuse. I told you lit a fuse.
Thank God. Thank God.
Because it bothers me. And then, we look and we say, well, we look at we look and we try to look at the economy and the way things are going, and we use that as evidence that things are not going so well. And when they talk about, inflation, well, this is not a national issue, it's an international issue.
Yes. Yes.
COVID caused inflation all around the world. Nothing happened in a vacuum in this country. Everything was consistent and came out of something else. And then they said, I heard some people say, well, we had this COVID relief. We got a check. Well, Obama did that.
Yes. Yes.
He put that in place. You just were blessed in the overflow of something that was done before. But we're not thinking like that. We're not thinking about what's really going on and what's behind it, because we're not doing the research. We're just taking everything on the surface and we're incorporating it as if it's gospel.
Yes. Yes.
And so, Doc, I tell you, it really, really does disturb me, because when I look at it and I talk to people and I hear this and I hear them talking about things, but they don't have any understanding of what they're talking about.
Okay.
They don't have your education. Now, I've been blessed. Look, I went to school. I got, my business. I have a, undergraduate degree in business. I got a master's of divinity, but I've been able to work in fields and I got a lot of, we call it Seventh Avenue. I got a street PhD, you
Okay.
know, I've been blessed to work in places where this information was clear, but my life experience has shown me some things. I've been some places and it bothers me because we elect people sometimes just because they got loud voices,
Yes. Yes.
but they're not engaged in the real process of making changes that will make life better for everyone.
And
And
I agree.
I said before, it's not about me, it's about we. Because if we all do good, we rise together.
Yes.
Right? If somebody is doing poorly, if we're on a boat and some people are sinking, but you on the other side of it, you may not be in the water yet, but you going down
You
too.
going down?
Understand it? We on the this is
yeah,
this is one ship. It's called Mother Earth.
that's good. That's good.
Right? I don't. Whatever you do, we ain't going out in space. In fact,
No.
they just found out that the long people who coming back from that stayed up there for real long periods of time, they're in the hospital
Hmm.
because you can't exist outside of this planet without air and oxygen and the atmosphere. Something happens to your body, it doesn't respond well to that. Now
Right.
you can have artificial, you can have oxygen coming in, but you have to be in this atmosphere.
Yes. Yes.
God created this for us.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so if you're not here, we ain't going to the moon to live.
Right.
We ain't going to Mars.
Right. Right.
This is it,
Mr.
y'all.
Mr. Musk, you're wrong.
Absolutely. Totally. Completely.
That's good. But how do we wake? How do we wake up the people to say, listen, if we don't address this, it's we on a cycle, and these Generation Z's, I don't think they can handle what our ancestors gave to us because people in their 50s and 60s and 40s, they are not feeding the 22, 23-year olds the way the people that now, like, Quincy Jones just died, 91 years old.
Yep.
You can look at all the Dr. Dre, Pharrell, you can look at all of those producers who patterned themselves after Quincy Jones. But very few people can pattern themselves behind Dr. Dre and Pharrell, uh, Mr. Combs. There's just too many things that happen that they're just not there. They're not there. So if we don't do something, we are really, 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 we're going to be in trouble.
We're going to be in trouble. It's interesting, right? Cheryl asked, okay, Rev, what are we going to do? Now, a couple of weeks ago, I talked about being versus doing.
Okay.
Doing is an action that you take based upon who you are.
Okay.
But if you're being who God created you to be, right? If you're being faithful, if you're being diligent, if you're being, if you're taking what your parents and grandparents and great grandparents, if you're really looking at what they blessed you with, and then you're being the person that they hoped that you would be because they instilled in you certain values that you don't just accept everything that's placed before you. You actually take the time to examine it and then talk about it to others. You can't just sit there and I'm the president of my precinct council, right? And
Yes.
right, and we meet and we've been meeting virtually for years after COVID. We just had our first in-person meeting last week. We're going to go back to doing that, but I'm not going to give up the virtual meetings because that brings other people in, right? It's kind of.
Yes.
But here's the thing: when we vote and we vote, and then I don't ask for a show of hands because it's too, it's too, this is virtual. So I say to them, your silence is your consent. If you have an objection, please let us know. Raise your hand. We'll address the objection. But if you have no objections, your silence is your consent. Now, where do I get that from? I get it from humanity. Because when good people say nothing, bad things happen. Your silence is your consent. You go along with it. I just use it in a positive way. But in a negative sense, if you're not saying anything, then anything goes.
Yes.
If you sit around and talk about what happened as opposed to becoming involved in what is happening, then you are doing the wrong thing because your silence becomes your consent. You are giving permission for everything to take place that's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that. You
No.
have to speak up. You have to say something. You can't sit there. You can't do it. You can't, because if you do, then you are saying by your actions that you're okay with it.
Yes.
So we have to get out of this apathetic mode. I ran for city council once.
Mm-hmm.
Ran for city council. There are 173,000 people registered in the area in which I live when I ran for this office. It was a special election.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many people actually came out and voted in this special election? Now, let me put it this way. The person who won the vote, and I told all of the churches that I know all the churches, right? In my neighborhood, in my community, I said, if you get them to the, whether they vote for me or not, get them to the poll so that they can vote, exercise their right to vote.
Mm-hmm.
I said, if I get 1,300 votes, I will win.
1,300.
1,300. The person who won got 1,200 votes and won in a district that has 173,000 registered voters. Apathy. Apathy. People sitting around doing nothing, talking about things, but doing nothing to change them. Apathy. And in our communities, what happens is that they put a lot of crap out there. We see it, we hear it. Oh, I don't want to be bothered with all that nonsense. I ain't gonna do nothing. So we just step away. And people who are watching us, that's what they see as our culture. It's an apathetic culture that exists in our community. So they don't have to give any credence to what you want or what you need, because your position is you'll just do nothing. Nothing. You won't come out and vote. You won't come out and say anything. You won't stand up in opposition. You won't express your opinion. And so when somebody does, they say, well, he's so different. She's so different. Why is she so boisterous? She must be, you know what they call a woman who's got a lot of lip, right?
Yes, yes.
Right. So why? So that's what I'm saying. We have created this culture that's what other people see. And when you find someone who has a better understanding of who they are, and they exhibit who they are in public, people don't necessarily know how to deal with them. Even their own people don't know how to deal with them. So what are we going to do, Cheryl? We are going to be who God called us to be, boldly. He didn't give you a spirit of fear. Did not give you a spirit of fear. What are you afraid of? I mean, here's my question. Doc, listen to this.
I'm listening.
I'm gonna let you say something, because I'm sorry, but I told you you lit the fuse.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
This is what I asked, right? I said, look, oh my God, a chain of thought. You know, if oh man, I lost my train of thought. It'll come back to me in a minute. It'll come back to me in a minute. What was I saying? This is before I apologized. I didn't want to apologize. I should just say what I was going to say.
You would
Give me something to remember.
you were saying that people that come up and they try to make us. You said there are people that they're sitting quietly, and if a woman is speaking, they have a word for that. They would say,
Oh yeah, they call her.
"Yes,
They call her B because she's
yes,
because she's talking too much, and
yes,
that's not just in our culture. That's in other cultures.
yes."
And a lot of people from other cultures, their women better not say anything.
Right.
So we have that mutual kind of a thing. We have got to get beyond that, because if we don't, then we are literally we're sabotaging our own best interests.
Hmm.
We are sabotaging ourselves. We are creating animosities within ourselves, and we begin to dislike the things about us that we are. And
Hmm.
we're that kind of a people. I think a lot about the apathy, though, the apathy that we have, the culture that we've created, that people don't necessarily take us seriously.
Hmm.
That bothers me, that
Hmm.
people don't take us seriously. I'll give you, for instance, I had do work with a police, and we try to, it was called Ceasefire. I was the moderator for that. And so I invited, and they have it in Brooklyn, Manhattan, not Manhattan, but the Bronx and Queens and Staten Island. And I'm the moderator for all except Brooklyn. Don't do Brooklyn. And I say, community will no longer tolerate this violence, right? Clergy standing here waiting to work with you to help you. The police, ATF, sheriffs, district attorney, U.S. district attorney, probation, parole, corrections, they're all looking at you. If the violence continues, you're going to get the attention of all these law enforcement agencies. But in the meantime, whatever you need to come out of this lifestyle of crime and violence, they'll help you to get it. Unprecedented message. I would say that, the community is no longer going to tolerate this from our own people. And I
Hmm.
look on the side, and there'd be nobody there. I'm the only one there speaking for the community,
Wow.
open to the community, but nobody there. So I part of what I was going to say is that, you know, in all of the churches, when I was running for public office, I told all the churches that if you just get them to the polls, just get them to the polls, let them vote, give them the opportunity to exercise their voice. And they didn't do it. And so the person, I know, Doc, I know 1,200 people myself.
Yes.
I mean, personally, right? I mean, come on, 1,300 people, that's no big number.
No, no, that is. No, that is. Uh,
Right. So, Cheryl says, listen, she says, bold does not mean loud.
right.
But I find that speaking up may mean not being invited back to the table.
Right.
Today requires a different strategy. I'm wrestling with it. And Cheryl, you're right. It does require a different strategy. You don't have to be boisterous. You
Mm-hmm.
don't you don't have to be antagonistic. But I read something today from one of the books that I like to read. And it's really interesting. Listen to this. It says, you can tell whether a man or a woman is clever by their answers. You can tell whether a man or a woman is wise by their questions.
Mm-hmm.
So Don't tell a whole lot of stories. Don't tell a whole lot of, you ain't got to, you can't tell people what they need to know. They won't listen to you. Ask questions and try to draw it out of them. It's there. You just got to figure out, we have to figure out a way to help them to become who God created them to be. You can't tell them. You know that, Pastor. We preach.
Yes.
And people look at you, but when you ask them, you get them involved and engaged, and they figure it out for themselves. They own it. They own it. We have to help people to own it. You know, I started a chaplaincy. I told you that, right?
Yes.
And this chaplaincy is growing really, really well. And my whole point is that I want to help them to become who God wanted them to be. My leadership should be able to pull out of them who they are. I'm not trying to put me in them. I'm trying to pull out of them who they are, who God put in them. That's the key. That's what it's about. Helping other people to become their best helps you to become your best. And it doesn't matter what color you are, it doesn't matter what your ethnic background is, it doesn't matter what your financial situation is, none of that. But when you start thinking about what's in it for me,
right,
nobody else counts.
Yes.
Nobody. And I see it, you know, it brings tears. If there's one thing that brings tears to my eyes, it's that. People who are only concerned about what they can get out of it.
Yes.
So come on, Pastor. I've been standing on this soapbox for a long time. And we're almost out of time. So I got to give you an opportunity. You are my special guest, and I want to take the time, but please.
But you have me so captivated because what you're saying, that's what we need to hear. Last week when I came with you, Tuesday, I went to the funeral of the 4-year-old man.
Yes.
And the mother was mad. I mean, the grandmother was mad. The aunt was mad. Community activists were angry. Yet, we didn't see any activity before the death of this child and the $40 million lawsuit. We didn't see any activity to say he has 4 children, but you had not one birthday party, but you just dutiful relatives. And well, you just said that only thing that I have to do is nothing. That's how things like tomorrow, if people don't come to the poll and vote, that's how a guy with 34 felonies, not trying to be political, but someone has to step up. Reading this clip of Martin Luther King said, I'm not telling you who to vote for, but
who to vote for.
Right. He said, I'm not telling you who to vote for. But if you look at the rhetoric that the people are spouting, your common sense should tell you,
right,
this is the kind of person that is leading me. And you look up. Now all these guys are in jail in states where they can't vote.
Right.
But one man can run for office. You can say, but Wayne, he don't give me that. Like some have been saying, he hasn't been sentenced. I said, no, you don't have to be sentenced. Once you're convicted,
right.
It's on your record. It's on your record.
Exactly.
If you do 1 day in jail, 1,000 days in jail, you already convicted.
Right.
But this person, everything's okay. But it's also teaching us that who really is paying attention to the courts. So the courts are major items because people without billions of dollars. They can't vote. They can't fight.
Can't
The
fight.
court.
Right.
Can't fight.
Right.
So but when you have billions of dollars and you lose $100 million lawsuits and you can appeal without putting up 10%.
Right.
If I can't appeal a conviction or judgment against me without an undertaking,
Right.
I have to either put up the money of if I lose, because if I lose, the court's going to take the money right away. But this person he lost $100 and something $million a judgment.
Yep.
But he didn't have to put up any money in
Right.
order
To walk
so
free.
the laws do not apply to him.
Right. I mean, think about it. Think about it. You got Sean Combs,
Yes.
R. Kelly, and
Right.
then on and on and on. These guys have money.
Money.
Money doesn't count
No.
a culture that we live in.
Right.
So it's not, and see, an interesting thing, the fallacious reasoning that we have adopted is that if we make money, we get to play the game like they do.
Yes.
It doesn't work like that.
No.
Because there's no equity in the system.
Right.
You can't get there like that. You see,
No.
you can't get there just because you make money. Because remember, they've allowed many of us to make money. I'm not one of them, but they've allowed many of us to make a lot of money, right? But and somehow or another, you think you're on equal ground. You are not on equal ground because there's no equity here.
Right. Right. Because
unless you fight the fight that's necessary to level the playing field, you're just playing on, you're playing on in mud, and they're playing on solid ground.
Yes.
There's no equity.
You sit there and the person would say, like you said, Wayne, I have good credit. That didn't lower my insurance.
Right. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
So some guy would stand up and he would say, oh, my credit's 750, 800. I pay my insurance in negligible.
Right.
My credit, but my community that I live.
Yep.
They look up and they call me. They say, "Oh, wait, you aren't normal." A man of color with a decent credit score, he isn't normal.
Right.
You're like, it doesn't make sense. But the playing fields are not level.
See, and that's what I'm saying, right? If we're not addressing the issues that really exist, we are not creating equity. And so, you can say what you want, you can believe the way you want, but the reality is different from what you think. If you got to look at the reality, where are we? What's really happening? Then you can begin to decide, and you can begin to decipher, and you can begin to work out to make things different. But you've got to hold those individuals accountable, because you can't elect people, you can't put people in office that don't really know the issues. We do that all the time.
Yes.
I don't care if you're black, white, green, purple, or whatever, polka dot. But if you're not working and trying to solve the issues that really matter, right? Because when you get there, now you become a part of the system that's designed to keep some people where they are and others where they are.
Yes.
So you now become a part of that. And if you violate that, as others do regularly,
yes,
they say, oh, you violated. We're going to charge you because you violated. But I'm just doing what everybody else does. Yeah, but you're not everybody else.
That's right.
You are you. And because you're you, we coming after you.
Yes.
And so see, the rules don't apply the same way.
Yes.
If you don't understand that, then you're living in a I don't know what kind of world you're living in.
Well, you live in that world where you look up, like I'm reading the Turkish embassy.
Mm-hmm.
3 years before this man was mayor, finished their building. But he's been charged that he sold the influence. You're sitting there, you're like, okay, where's the money? I don't know anyone who could hide $10 million.
Mm-hmm.
So they're supposed to have given him $10 million. Where's the checks? Where are the things? But I'm upset with him because I'm saying you act as if you don't know. There are two sets of rules. And you were a policeman.
Absolutely.
You know there are two sets of rules. And the thing happens, these are all the things that that are coming up in our face. We have all the people in all of the places where uh, Dr. Russell, where they visible, supposed to be, I made it, then all of a sudden you get tripped. Silly stuff.
Yep.
No.
Yep. Yep. Oh, by the way, guys, stay with us a little bit. We
Yes.
go a little over. It's 10 o'clock. It's 10:01.
I'm
That's
sorry.
okay. We're gonna go a little further. That's okay. That's okay. But this is just too good to let go right now. Tomorrow's
It's
an important day. These are issues that we really need to discuss.
right.
So tell a phone, tell a friend that they need to go back and watch this broadcast tonight. But yeah, you're right. And see, if you're not quite if you don't ever think, and I tell people, listen, you ain't never gonna get in.
No.
The reason that slavery worked, they had indentured servants, right? There was indentured servants in this nation and the world, but they could blend in with the major culture.
Mm-hmm.
We could never blend in with the major culture.
No.
Why? Because they based it on color.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy to separate us from everybody else because we don't look like everybody else.
Yes.
Right? We don't. It's easy. We're not the same that in that way. We are, if you took skin away and all, we are exactly the same. There are some differences and things like that. And, if you do transplant, some things transplant better in the people of color, people who are Anglo, because there's similarities in the bodies and so on and so forth. But for the most part, we are the same. The Lord made us that way.
Yes.
And he gave us these differences, not so that we would, be antagonistic nor animostic to each other, but so that we could literally figure out how great we are when we stand together.
Yes. Yes.
And we are.
We are
And amazing when we stand together.
Yes. And I thank you tonight because what it's doing is saying stay relevant.
Yeah.
Stay relevant. And remember, no matter how many hurdles you have jumped, there's still that many hurdles that are still before.
They just keep moving the goalposts.
Yes. I'm sitting here, and I'm speaking to some young fellas, some young guys, and they're sitting there, and I said, but yes, I said, our community has to change its perception.
Absolutely.
Crime, because in some parts of our communities, if you are a citizen that has returned, a returning citizen,
mm-hmm.
they still clutch their purse when you walk past.
Yep.
But here's the president. Here's a guy who's running for the presidency of the United States. I keep harping on that, and he has 34 convictions.
Yep.
Puffy hasn't even been convicted.
Some more coming.
Yes, and some more coming. And Puffy hasn't even. Sean Cohn hasn't even been convicted.
Right.
Offered $50 million.
He's not walking around.
No, and he offered $50 million, and they said he's a flight risk. Well, this man used to own Eastern Air. I don't know if you remember Eastern Air,
mm-hmm.
but he bought Eastern Air and called it Trump.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think he has access to a private plane?
He does. If he got Trump, he got his own plane.
Yes, and then so you sit in there, you're like, Okay, but he can walk around. He's been convicted, and judges are making excuses, moving the goal line every day. But if that was any of us, 34, 34 convictions,
Right.
we wouldn't have enough bail money. We
Right.
would have enough. Oh,
You know, look, anybody in our
yes,
community with 34 convictions would be in jail.
yes,
Anybody.
yes, and so when you're saying, okay, so what are our ancestors? What are our ancestors? What are they saying? Could I do Dred Scott?
Yeah.
A black man has no rights
Right.
that an Anglo would honor.
Right.
He said, I won the case and still lost because now I have no standing.
Right. Right. Right.
If I had no standing, why did you take me to court? If I had no standing,
Right. Right.
what am I doing in court? So,
You know what's interesting? Remember, I was released from a job that I had,
uh-huh.
and the vice president of HR said, "Lauren, I can't believe I'm having this conversation with you. I just can't believe it. It's no reason for it, but I got to do it. No problem." So, I talked to a friend of mine. My friend was an attorney with the United States Department of what was she? United States Department of Civil Rights. She said, "Well, Lauren, I have a case. You have a case." I said, "Yeah, but for what? If I do it and I win, what's the point? Then they'll just find a reason to get rid of me
Mm-hmm.
and they won't give me a severance, right? I mean, what difference would it make? It would make no difference.
Right.
So I'll just take the severance and go and just do what I do and be who I am.
Right.
I'm not going to let them destroy who I am because who I am can't be, can't be, it can't be tarnished.
No.
So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So let me do this, right? Because we are a little bit over, but
Hey, bro.
I got
Thank
some
you.
to share with them that the Lord had inspired me with, and so I want to do that before we get out, and then I'm gonna give you an opportunity. We'll close out this way. All right. And I asked the question, what are your earliest memories? Do you remember the first time you walked into, all of that kind of stuff? I asked those questions and stuff in this article. What is your earliest memories? But I want to ask you a couple other things. After reading the article this week, a friend texted me and she said that I remember sitting on that shiny wax floor when I was 3, trying to tie my shoes. I looped and looped the strings around until I got it right. That's what she thinks. That's what she texts me. She actually remembers that.
Mhm.
Many of the things we learn in our early life, whether we remember them or not, were taught to us to prepare us for future blessings. That's why we got them, right? For future blessings. Now, whether we are about to bask in the glory of our successes or wallow in self-pity or face a new and challenging obstacle, the Lord invites us to think back and remember where we come from. He has empowered us for every victory and sustained us through every defeat. He hasn't brought us a mighty long way. He brought us all the way.
Yes.
Reverend Dr. S.W. Stokely and I have been talking to and about believers today and how we are living in the overflow of promises made to our ancestors, our Christian ancestors, and our African diaspora ancestors. Promises made to our ancestors who suffered through slavery, colonialization, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, segregation, nullification, redlining, prejudice, and discrimination. We have to think back in order to move forward.
Yes.
The Bible says, and you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who
Yes.
gives you power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he swore to your fathers, as it is this day.
Yes.
As it is this day. And that part of the verse in the easy to read version of the Bible says it this way, as he is doing today.
Okay.
Doing today. That's a carryover from the promises made to our ancestors. Doing today is the excess blessings coming after and out of our wilderness experience. Doing today is living in the overflow.
Yes.
We are obligated to live up to the great expectations of living in the overflow in every area of our life. Our ancestors were fruitful in their walk with the Lord. They may have gotten a taste of the blessings, but we are living in the overflow, just as the Lord promised. Doing today is the overflow of blessings for today's believers, to do good in the end. That's what the Lord promised, to do you good in the end. Just as the Lord promised, he will do it. We look back, but we ain't going back.
No.
We ain't going back. We are living in the overflow.
I agree.
Thank you, Reverend Dr.
Thank you,
Wayne Stokely, for being my guest for the second week in a row. You know,
thank you,
first to ever be with
thank
me
you.
2 weeks in a row. And
Thank
last
you.
week you touched the nerve.
I'm honored.
Touched the nerve. Lit a fire. You lit the fuse. And I realized that election day is tomorrow.
Yes.
And we have been given our marching orders.
Yes.
We look back, but we ain't going back.
No.
Our blessings are an overflow from the promises made to our ancestors as it is this day.
Today.
And they mandate that we make the best of every single blessing we are receiving.
Yes.
Economic, financial awakening is a big part of our blessings, and we are charged to do better than those who did not get the opportunity.
I agree.
I thank you, my brother.
Thank you, my brother. And God bless you.
And pouring from your storehouse of wisdom and allowing me just to talk about those things that are near and dear to my heart. Because that's not always easy. And I don't always do that because I think when my guests are on, you are the expert. But I thank you for allowing me to just talk. So that means I got to get you back again so that we
I'll be honored. And one of these days I'm gonna call you and come up that way by the South Bronx and we do this.
That would be great.
In the flesh. I thank you.
And
thank you.
You're in Brooklyn. I come to Brooklyn. My niece is in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And by the way, in case anybody missed this, CW has made it clear that the obligation, the responsibility, the duty of those of us living in the overflow today can be evidenced tomorrow at the voting booth.
Okay.
If you not already cast your vote,
cast.
That's how we show we are living in the overflow.
I thank you, and God bless you.
Welcome. And
take care, my brother.
Don't forget our advertising and sponsors. I got to do this. The J. Lauren R. Consulting LLC for all your church financial needs. Those are my companies. Call 718-328-8096, 718-328-8096, or email us at jlorenr@jlr.llc. You get that? That's my domain, jlorenr@jlr.llc. It's not about the castle. It's about the kingdom. Mattetrs of Faith, the book. I've been talking about it all night. This is the book. Same letters back here. This is the book.
Okay.
A copy. This is the hard copy. You can get it by sending $24.15 that covers shipping and handling to my Gmail Cash app. $ Mattetrs of Faith, $24.15. Or you can get the e-version, the electronic copy by going to Smashwords. I'm going to put that in the chat so that you will have it. But if you don't have it, ma'am, sir, make sure that you get it because you need to have that book. I mean, I don't do a lot of self-promoting, but it's a good book. And it'll be a blessing to you. I promise you it will be a blessing to you.
Thank you. Put it in the chat.
That magazine carries my column. They don't have to do it, but they did it. So we bartered this thing. I talk about who they are. I've had the publisher and the editor on. I'll have it on again. But it's a wonderful magazine. They publish quarterly. 2-year subscription is only $27.50. And please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this YouTube channel, the Mattetrs of Faith radio show YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe it so that you'll get notification when I'm on. And then share it. Share it with your friends, your colleagues, and associates. How about if something goes viral besides some of that nonsense that you see all the time, but something that really has a beneficial and a magnificent impact on the lives of people for real, like Mattetrs of Faith. So subscribe, like, and then share the Mattetrs of Faith YouTube channel. Telephone, text, email, message, any way you do it. But tell a friend to join us regularly on Monday nights for Mattetrs of Faith, the radio show. We're live, as you know, on Mattetrs of Faith, this YouTube channel. We also drop each episode, as we did tonight, on our Mattetrs of Faith and the J. Lauren Russell's Facebook groups. Please, ma'am, please, sir, subscribe, like, and share this Matters of Faith YouTube channel. Make sure that you don't miss a single episode of Matters of Faith because you did not subscribe, like, and then share the Matters of Faith radio show YouTube channel. Now, the Lord bless you, the Lord keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Now, if no one told you this today, let me be the first to say that I love you, and there's absolutely nothing that you can do about it. So get used to it.
Thank you, brother.
Next week on Matters of Faith, the radio show, and on behalf of my guest, my friend, Reverend Dr. C. Wayne Stokely, and myself, I want to wish you all a good night. God bless you. Again, we love you. There's
Yes.
nothing that you can do about it.
Yes.
Get used to it, and we'll see you all next week. Don't forget, telephone and tell a friend. We'll see you then. Okay?
Thank you. All right. God bless.
All right. You too.